Hello, I'm Allie LaCroix, and I will be doing a talkumentary. I did my 10-page paper on human trafficking. My main claim was that the United States should involve itself in policing other nations in regards to human trafficking since it's such a strong world power. The section that I'm going to be reading from my paper for my talkumentary is my first main claim, which is that all humans are entitled to basic human rights, and it should be our nation's interests if these rights are violated. The United States Declaration of Independence states, "All humans are created equal." Despite this, not all humans are treated equally. All over the world, nations have different freedoms allotted to their citizens. Some nations do not allow religious and political freedom, whereas some do. Citizens of the United States are very fortunate to have almost complete freedom, unlike the majority of other countries around the world. Although not everyone may have the freedom to say or do what they want, every human should be entitled to the freedom of living their life how they choose and having control over their bodies. Human trafficking is a modern form of slavery that violates the basic human rights that all people should have. John Stuart Mill, a philosopher, claims that the most important universal freedoms include being able to do as you wish if it does not harm others, freedom of assembly, and freedom of speech. Those recruited into trafficking have all of these rights and more taken from them once they have become enslaved as property. Mahidol University's Institute for Population and Social Research did a study that showed victims of trafficking received no pay, were deprived of sleep, had wounds from beatings and sexual assault, and were also raped. Not only were these people enslaved against their will, but they were abused terribly. The majority of these victims were women and young girls, because they can be enslaved as labor workers and prostitutes as well. Forcing someone to work without pay is slavery, and that is exactly what human trafficking is. The United States isn't the only country to have ruled that slavery and trafficking humans is in general is wrong. The countries a part of the United Nations have signed to agree to this as well. Article 4 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights reads, "No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms." It continues to read in Article 5, "No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment of punishment." Human trafficking violates both of these articles and many others found in this declaration signed by all nations in the United Nations. All nations in the United Nations are in agreement that human trafficking is wrong, and those who are committing these horrid crimes should be prosecuted and imprisoned. In addition to this declaration, there is also the Palermo Protocol, which is an international treaty that makes it a crime to recruit, transfer, harbor, or purchase a person for the purpose of any type of exploitation, along with the sale of organs. Despite these statements, laws, and treaties, human trafficking continues to be a flourishing business for criminals. To take away the freedom and life of another person is unethical. Even when these victims are set free, they are never going to forget what has happened to them. The aftermath of freed trafficking victims is almost as worse as the acts they are forced to do. The psychological strain that the victims have been put through will stick with them for the rest of their life. They will never be able to peacefully return to what their life was before they were tricked into being sold as a slave. People are tricked into believe that they will get a better life when they are recruited as slaves. Women trying to travel to a new country for a better life believe that they will work to pay off their travel fees, but realistically, they will never repay their debt because they have been tricked into a life they did not want. The lies that the victims are told, the acts that they have to do while enslaved, and the aftermath when and if they are freed is all a violation of the basic human rights everyone should have. In most cases, immigrants are being charged for travel expenses, and in order to pay back their debt, which is how they are sold into trafficking. The traffickers commission overinflated living expenses, medical expenses, and other additional charges are tacked onto the victim's debt in order to keep the victims from earning their freedom. Running away is not an option to these slaves because they are threatened that if they try to flee, then their family members and loved ones will be killed or tortured. For this reason, it should be in the United States' best interest to fight for the rights of those people who are victimized into living this cruel life and working as slaves. They need a voice, and the United States is strong enough to speak out for those who are stripped of their rights. After listening to my own reading of my essay, I thought that I noticed I had a couple sentences that were pretty awkward. When I had commas and ands, it sounded pretty awkward, and I probably should have rephrased the sentence so it flowed better. And I also had a lot of words that I repeated over and over again, and it just made it sound awkward and it didn't flow as well. Like the part when I said, the country is a part of the United Nations, and then I said, the nations of the United Nations, and then I literally said it again. So 3 times I said nations, like maybe 8 times within 2 sentences. Um, I also, when I was talking about how the victims are tricked and into this pay and they become traffickers, I said tricked a lot, and that's kind of not really um, a word that sounds good in an argument. I guess I should have maybe used it once and then chosen another word. There's also one part in my essay where I said that I was talking about how women come over and they're the ones tricked, but women aren't the only ones tricked, so that was kind of irrelevant, and I probably should have just said immigrants in general, not just women. And I thought that my argument, it sounded more of an argument towards the end, and I guess it sounded more, the strength of my argument got because the beginning was more factually based, and I guess that's how I set up my argument. And then towards the end, I started arguing um, why this should change. So I think it flowed well in regards to how I had my facts at the beginning and to set up my argument. So I didn't think it was too bad. I just wish I could have rephrased some sentences so that it flowed better and didn't sound as awkward. That's about all I have to reflect on for my documentary. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.